The African American Legend series highlights the accomplishments of blacks in areas as varied as politics, sports, aviation, business, literature, religion, and education. We'll explore how African Americans have succeeded in areas where they've been previously excluded because of segregation, racism, and lack of opportunity. I'm your host, Dr. Roscoe C. Brown, Jr., and with us today is Honorable David N. Dinkins, the 106th Mayor of New York City. Welcome to African American Legends, Dave.
Fighter pilot, I'm happy to be with you.
I'm very happy to be with the first African American mayor in the great city of New York.
I'm happy to be with the first man to shoot down a jet while flying a prop in World War II.
Okay, now let's talk about 2008. We've talked about the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. Let's talk about 2008. There's a presidential campaign coming up. We're electing a new president. George W. Bush is term limited. He's gone. So what are the issues that the candidates, both Republican and Democrat, are going to be facing? What are the key issues that the public is concerned about?
Well, for quite a while, I think the public had been concerned largely with Iraq and the war. But gradually, it's turning to the economy. And I think more people are concerned about the economy right now. We have a whole variety of reasons why. The predatory lenders that have forced a lot of people to lose their homes, the rising tax rates and whatnot. So that what you hear more often as we view the news and listen to the commentators, it seems that the main issue today, right now as we speak, is the economy.
But one of the things that all the candidates have had trouble is focusing. They start out with the war, they go to the economy, and then they go to immigration, and then they go to Social Security, and then they go to health care. And in some ways, that just follows the news, what's most recently been talked about.
Exactly.
But on the other hand, it confuses the way in which some of the campaigns operate. So how do you see all of these things coming together? Well, domestic and foreign issues.
Well, I think you're right. See, ideally, a candidate would have a posture, an attitude, and stay with that. But the reality being what it is, what they do is they follow what they think the public wants to hear. If the public seems to be more interested in Iraq, then the question gets to be, well, how soon are we going to withdraw our troops? And when that sort of died down, it got to be the economy. And so that when people were talking about the war, that is when candidates were talking about the war, the people in the audiences were saying, yeah, but what about my rent? And so forth. And I suppose the courageous, far-sighted candidate would adopt a position and stay with that and hope that the people would come around to his or her position.
Well, the media plays a major role in this. Some of the attack dogs in the media will put any candidate on the spotlight. For example, Obama and Clinton had over 20 debates. And each one was in a venue where a moderator from the major media would take over and ask the questions. And that would drive the debate in a certain way. And then the next debate, they'd pick up another thing and try to drive the debate there. I think the Democrats have had more of a contentious debate process than the Republicans, although I'm not sure about that either, because Rudy Giuliani started out to be the leader, and then as a result of some both tactical errors and some errors in the debate, he ended up dropping out.
Yeah, well, he fell out relatively early, but I agree that the Democrats have had a more strenuous circumstance, and I've noted that on more than one occasion, when the candidates were not at each other's throats, then the moderator would suggest that, well, this is a love-in. Now, what about so-and-so? And would try to stir them up, because that's the media's job, or they see it as their job. And you see it in the newspapers as well, and the print media, the electronics media, the broadcast media. The reporters will get you to say one thing and then run to me and say, well, Roscoe says so-and-so. What do you say about that? It's in their interest to stir up things.
Well, you were the mayor from 92 to 96, and the press was after you every single day. Not 92, it was 94.
94.
Having been in that spot, tell me and tell the audience, how do you handle all of these diverse things coming at you at the same time?
Well, you know, it's like they say, well, how do you put 4 elephants in a Volkswagen with 2 in the front and 2 in the back? Well, that's how you handle those problems, just one at a time as they come at you. And you grow into the job. You get used to it. At first, you let it bother you, or I let it bother me, but not for long, because I understood, well, that's what they see as their job. And sometimes a reporter would say to me, they ask a question, I'd respond, and then a reporter would say, well, in other words, and my standard response was, not in other words, in the words I just gave you. Because they wanted to couch the circumstance in a way that fit what they wanted, the point they wanted to make.
As a black mayor, the first black mayor, just like Obama's one of the first black candidates, the first who has a serious opportunity. Now, Shirley Chisholm was the first to indicate she was going to be president. Jesse Jackson, who both you and I worked with, wanted to be president and put up a good campaign. Obama has made a really great campaign. How serious is race a factor in a campaign in a multi-ethnic society?
I think it's very much a factor. I note in the current press, you will read about the Bradley factor, meaning thereby that people in polling will suggest that they'll vote for a minority black candidate, but then they don't. It happened with Tom Bradley. It happened with Andy Young.
It happened to you.
It happened to me. You'll see that. But I think that Obama has probably breached that gap better than ever has been done before, so that more and more whites are in favor of him now. It's difficult to assess his circumstance since there is an anti-Hillary factor. So it's very difficult to figure whether a given voter is pro-Obama more than anti-Hillary. Although obviously Hillary has an awful a lot of people who are in her camp, as am I.
Well, of course, the media plays a major role in this.
Oh, yeah.
The media has been very much an attack dog on the Clinton folks. And so much so that even on Saturday Night Live, they say Obama got a break. Now they're saying that McCain is going to get a break because the media likes war heroes. This is a little cynical, but to the general public, how do you explain to them the vagaries in these political approaches? Is it really issues or is it personality?
I think it's some of each. I really do believe it's some of each. And I also believe that the public's a whole lot smarter than we in the political realm give them credit for. It is true you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all of the time. Witness Rudy. Rudy was the world's mayor, certainly America's mayor. And he was lauded in France and England, and he was a hero everywhere. But slowly the public began to catch up with him, and he dropped out early on.
And he dropped out because he didn't get a groundswell of support.
And I think the reason he didn't get that groundswell is some of the things that some of us in New York and the New York local media had always known began to come out, and the stories began to get legs, as they say in the media. And so that the national press began to cite some of these things. And so while he had much to commend him, he certainly had some flaws, which became apparent.
And that leads us to the question of how do you run a campaign? He decided that he wasn't going to get into the primary, he was going to focus on Florida. Clinton decided she was going to focus on big states, and Obama decided he was going to focus on small states. First of all, who develops the strategy? I know the candidate alone doesn't develop it,
No.
but what are some of the indicators as to what strategy you should pursue in a political campaign?
Well, it's a function, of course, of a given candidate, but I think in general what candidates do, or what campaigns do, is they do polling, they do focus groups to try to determine what sells, as it were. Mm-hmm. In the same fashion, when they run commercials, ads, they're not quite sure what will work. You, of course, remember Lyndon Johnson against Goldwater with the daisies. The child is picking the daisy apart, and in the background there's an atom bomb.
Right.
That thing was so explosive, no pun intended, that they use it only once. Mm-hmm. And so now there's talk about Hillary's ad about somebody answering the phone at 3 a.m. who's best equipped to do that in the White House. And in a split second almost, Barack was back with an ad saying, well, it's not so much who answers the phone, but what judgment you make when you answer the phone. Mm-hmm. Now, in each case, they're doing what their advisors believe will, quote, sell to the general public. Mm-hmm. And you really don't know till after the fact.
Mm-hmm. Well, you in your campaign developed a theme about the gorgeous mosaic of New York City. And that sold very well until Crown Heights happened. Mm. So how did you make that transition? Because you did some things, Cops and Kids and so on, that helped to bring the city back together again.
Well, we had the good fortune of having an awful lot of very smart, good people who genuinely wanted to do the right thing and do the best thing, and who opposed bigotry and anti-Semitism and homophobia and all those things. I mean, they genuinely, that's how they felt. And I had those kinds of people around me. Now, clearly we made some mistakes, some things we didn't do as well as we wished. In Crown Heights, for instance, if I had a day or two sooner said to the police, as I did ultimately, that whatever you guys are doing is not working. Mm-hmm. Those were almost my exact words. And the New York City Police Department is the best in the world at controlling riots, and yet they had an inability up to that point to handle it well. And then they sort of beefed it up, and we got the job done. It is a difficult situation. There's nothing harder on an elected official or on any individual than to be falsely accused. When I was called Jew hater, murderer, all kinds of things, and yet I was the same guy who went to Munich and spoke at the gravesite of the White Rose when Ronald Reagan went to Bitburg to honor the German war dead. I'm the same fellow who went to Madison Square Garden and denounced Farrakhan for saying that Judaism is a gutter religion. And so sometimes it's, well, what have you done for me lately? And but you learn to live with that.
Well, that's one of the roles of leaders. You wouldn't step out there unless you believed in what you were going to do, and were going to try to do it to the best of your ability. Now, one of the issues that's splitting a lot of people is the immigration issue. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure the Republicans and the Democrats are going to differ on that. What is your opinion about where that's going to go in the campaign?
Well, I'm not sure where it's going to go in the campaign. I know how I feel. Mm-hmm. I feel that this country is a land of immigrants. Every year at the various parades, when we have gatherings before the parade, they have breakfasts and whatnot, and we have about 195 or so separate ethnic identities in New York, which is why I call it a gorgeous mosaic. It's also why we have a parade about every hour and a half. And so, and on those occasions, I have said repeatedly, year after year, some of us, our ancestors came in ships fleeing oppression. Some of us, our ancestors came in ships seeking freedom of religion. My ancestors came in the holds of slave ships in chains. But the point is, irrespective of the ships on which our ancestors may have come, we're all in the same boat now. And I say that time and time and time again. And so I believe that on the question of immigration, we should appreciate that nobody save the Native American Indian can claim any particular rights. But as you know, Dr. Brown, over time, they had signs, no blacks, Jews, dogs, no Italians. You know, each has been
a group.
Yeah, and it's terrible. And the sad part is, some after they get here and get comfortable, then they don't want anyone else to follow. That's why it was such a shame the fashion in which our country has treated Haitian immigrants. As Jesse Jackson used to say, if they made it through the shores, the shark-infested shores, he would say, to our shores, they ended up in something akin to concentration camps. And in the days of Devalle, Papa Doc and Baby Doc, and as I love to say, all the other damn docs, Haitians, if they made it here, they ended up in these concentration-like camps. And the Justice Department sent its number 3 person to Haiti to see whether they were fleeing economic oppression or political oppression. And this man came back and reported that they were merely fleeing economic oppression. For if it were political oppression, they might be entitled to political asylum. But if it were economic oppression, that's just unfortunate. And in the days of Devalle now, and it was really rough times, and this man came back and reported it was merely economic oppression. He incidentally was Rudolph W. Giuliani. He's a guy who reported that. And it is not right. People know that it is wrong, but that's the way we behave for so long. For that matter, our country had a wrong attitude about apartheid in South Africa. Our formal position was constructive engagement. It's a damn shame, a damn shame. But so anyway, I believe that we are a land of immigrants, and we should greet people with open arms and resettlement assistance. Instead of using it as an issue for those who don't have jobs, to say the reason you don't have a job is those immigrants. The answer is to produce more jobs.
Well, clearly that's the issue, and of course the immigrant picture is both legal immigrants and illegal immigrants, and the suggestion is that the illegal immigrants are taking jobs away from American citizens. But there are 12 million people here who are here undocumented, and it's going to be impossible, and shouldn't be, to send them out. So then the question that the candidates are going to face is, how do you develop a way of integrating them into the society? They talked about having learn to speak English, talking about paying a fine and so on. This is going to be a key issue in the presidential campaign. How do you think this is going to play out? Because it is a sectional issue. There are more in Texas and California and New Mexico, some in New York, some in Ohio. How do you think this is going to play out in affecting the campaign, how it comes out, Democratic or Republican?
Well, I suspect that the Democratic side, irrespective of who the presidential candidate is, whether it's Senator Obama or Senator Clinton, certain to be one of them, I think that person and that camp will be more liberal than will be the conservatives, because the Republicans are battling among themselves now about who is a genuine conservative. I mean, they're proud to be conservative.
Although McCain did support legislation that would have reformed our immigration policy, he's backed off of it now, because that's the nature of politics. Now, to what extent in this country is sectional politics a major factor in national politics? Does one section have more power than the other?
Well, on that issue, it'll make a big difference, because, as you pointed out a moment ago, you have a different circumstance in Texas and places like that than you have in, say, New York City. But even New York is concerned about it. I think that the more populous areas, thereby more votes, are the ones that have more sway. And Rhode Island is not apt to have the impact of a California.
Which brings us to this system we have, the Electoral College. What do you think about changing the election of the president from the Electoral College to popular vote?
Well, I think that the circumstance that we now have, that will permit a person with the majority vote, majority popular vote, as was the case with Al Gore and Bush, I think that's very, very unfortunate. I think that ought to be changed. I think it'll take a heap of doing to get it changed.
But the history of the Electoral College was to hold the nation together so that the most populous places wouldn't be running the policies for the country that might affect the less populous places, which actually had more land. So one of the real questions is how to do that. Now, one suggestion is give the electors an opportunity to go away from who they were elected to represent in the Electoral College. And some people are saying it's even possible to do that right now under the Constitution. Electors are not bound necessarily to vote for the people
who put them in
office.
Well, I don't know. I tell you this, it's going to be difficult to get done, but it needs some doing. And it becomes particularly important when you have a situation like we had with Gore and Bush, and if we have in the next election upcoming, if we have a similar, in '08 that is, if we have a similar situation, there will be a public outcry. Mm-hmm. The law is always behind the people. Mm-hmm. Whatever law there is, a circumstance will evolve, and then the legislatures, local or state or federal, will enact legislation, but only after the fact. It is very rare that you have a situation wherein the law, the legal aspect, precedes the wishes of the people.
Particularly since there's so many vested interests. The United States Senate, where a senator from South Dakota with a small population has as much power as a senator from New York, which is the second most populous state in the country. So those are one of the issues. And one of the things that an electoral campaign does is to bring these things to the fore so that people can discuss them and consider alternatives. Unfortunately, when they do, sometimes the media runs off on a tangent to knock it off. But the fact is, it's very, very important. Now, there's going to be an election in New York City in 2009 for a new mayor. What are going to be the key issues there?
Well, I'm trying to.
You're not running.
No, I'm not running, although I'm eligible to run.
I know that.
I'm eligible.
You've been term limited, you've been out, now you can run again if you want
right,
to.
Exactly. But I think I'm probably aged out. But I have a candidate, and I'm trying to, with him and others, try to figure out what his best posture ought be. I think that in almost any election, people are they're always looking to jobs and housing and the sort of what we refer to as bread and butter issues. Nobody wants to see taxes increase. If anything, they want to see them decrease. And these are issues that are important.
But they want services to stay up, even though the taxes go down, which is impossible.
And race frequently plays a role. Mm-hmm. That gets to be a function of what's going on at the time. Mm-hmm. If in the middle of the campaign you have a racial strife of some sort, then that gets to be an issue. But I think by and large, what people want is a comfort level. They want to feel that the people in charge really care about them and have the capacity to address their concerns.
That really is the secret of good leadership. However, as you say, a city of 8.2 million people, there's 192 different ethnic groups. There's so many other issues that people are concerned about. Now, one of the things that you confronted was the issue of safety, and you responded with the Cops and Kids program. Crime is not so much the major problem now. I think people are concerned about education, they're concerned about health care, and they're concerned about taxes.
Well, nobody knows better than you, Roscoe, education. I say nobody knows better than you because that's your field.
Mm-hmm.
You have your doctorate in education. You are a genuine expert in education. And as you know, for the first time ever, the Mayor Bloomberg has been able to get the state legislature to give him complete control of the school system. So we no longer have a board of education. We have a department of education, as we have a department of sanitation, a police department, a fire department. He is the sole person in charge. He appoints a chancellor, and the chancellor has a variety of subordinates, but the mayor is in complete control. And because that legislation is sunsetting, as they say, it's dying out, the legislature will have to make a judgment about whether or not to continue this, maybe with some caveats, with some little fringe changes, hopefully with greater import from the people.
And that's an example of the kind of thing that we're going to confront in the 2009 campaign. And this discussion has really been an insightful discussion. We've talked about the presidential campaign, we've talked about the issues, and we've talked about New York City. So your wisdom and your judgment and your guidance has been very helpful. Thanks to Dave Dinkins, 106th Mayor of New York City, for being with us on today's African American Legends. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.